All right, this is a demonstration of how to do the Lulu style leggings, including the gusset. So here's the back of my pant, and here is the front. You've got your right side facing up, and here's your gusset. You're going to take the tip of the gusset, and that's the one that's across from the marking on your gusset. So you're going to take this tip, and you're going to point it towards the back waistband. You're going to line up the gusset right along the side here, and again that marking is going to be right in that middle. You're going to pin it in place. You're going to sew this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so a 6 millimeter, a 0.6, which is the edge of the presser foot. And I would do it in a very narrow zigzag, and then we're going to go ahead and serge it afterwards. And I'm just going to sew right along here. No need to backstitch because we are going to serge it in place afterwards. This sewing it in place first helps so that when you serge it, the material's not going to shift on you. So now I have it sewn. Now I'm going to go to the serger, and I'm going to serge from here all the way down to the reel underneath. So place it just in there. You don't want to really cut off anything. There's no need for it, but make sure you're close to it. Put the needles down, make sure you're in the correct position, and away you go. Now we're going to add the second part of the back to the front here. And again, we're going to line up this part here, but we're also going to be lining up the center back seam. So not only are we sewing it together, but we're going to line up the center back seam. So again, good sides together. Line up the top. Give that a pin. And then line up the bottom part of this gusset with the bottom right here. And you're going to notice that we're going to be overlapping with the serge and this area here. So I like to kind of fold it so I can see where it's going. We want this to lay flat, and we want it to lay away from us, as opposed to this seam going in towards the gusset. That's not going to be very comfortable. So give that a pin there. And then pin this one here. And again, we're going to zigzag it first. Now there's a little bit of extra material there. We just kind of overlap it just a wee bit like that. Best we can do. And then go into the back here. Okay, and now we are ready to sew our center back seam and our gusset all in place. Again, no need to backstitch because we are going to be going over it again with the serger. Just hang on to your threads. Once you get used to actually working with the serger, you can go ahead and just serge it all. But I think for the first time, for the first few times, we want to make sure we're sewing it. Make sure you're pulling out that gusset part so that we don't sew over top of that. The other thing is you want to make sure your needle is always in the down position when you're finished. So now I have my gusset in place. So now we're going to serge that part. And I'll probably just start from the bottom as well and then work my way to the top. Again, I like to keep my needles in the up position when I start so that I can place it in nicely. I like to lift it in place, put the needles in the down position, and then go ahead and do your serging. So now we've got our gusset and we've got our back seam and our gusset is nice and open. So now we want to sew our center front seam. So lay your center front together. Again, go ahead and sew it first and then go ahead and serge that. Here you've got your indentation, or I did a little scissor snip for where your gusset will go, and that's when we're going to sew our legs together. So right in here, the center front, I just put a little snip mark, and that's going to show me where my gusset's going to go, so that the center of the gusset, the marking of the gusset, is going to line up with that center part. Right, so there's my center front, and I'm going to serge. Got my center front, I've got my center back with my gusset right here, and now I'm going to pin so that this center front lines up with my gusset marking, which is right here. So we want to line that part up, and you want to pin that first. It doesn't matter right now which way your seam goes. Just make sure when you do your waistband that the seam matches. Then I'm just making shorts just to make it easier. We're going to pin the bottom. And then we'll pin in between on the one side and do the same on the other side. Like that. This is where you want to pay attention to which way your seam's going to go. You always want your serge seam to go towards the bottom of your leggings or bottom of your shorts. So when you're sewing it or even serging it, make sure this guy doesn't flip over. So you might want to serge or sew from the other side. Now I'm going to do the same to the other leg. Okay, make sure everything's lined up. So now I'm ready to sew. And we're looking at the seam allowance. So I'm going to sew with my seams up so I can see them and I can control that a little bit better. So I'm coming to my first seam allowance. I want to make sure that that's folding down. So you might need to lift your presser foot a little bit. Take a pair of scissors and just hold that down while it comes over. You really just don't want that flipping over. That's not going to be comfortable. Take a look, make sure that your marking is again still lining up. Remove your pin slowly as you're going over that. So now I've got my seam and I'm going to serge it. I have the back of my pants is here, the gusset, and the front of my pants is right here. Now I'm ready for my waistband. Here's my waistband. We've cut out two. And you're going to be unfolding it, making sure the stretch runs across, and you're going to be sewing them together along this side here. So I'm going to go good sides together, and I'm going to pin this side, and I'm going to pin this side, and then I'm going to sew them. Again, making sure they line up at the bottom and at the other side. And then in the center. It has a slight curve in the center. We want to kind of keep that because it's going to be the top of ours and it just indents a little bit to give a little tighter fit. And this is where you can always change it. If you're finding that it's not tight enough, you can sort of increase it and then come back out. So again, that's why we like to do a mock-up first to see, does it fit Do I like it? And then we adapt our pattern to that. There we go. When I'm sewing, I'm just pulling just a little bit just to help guide it, but I'm not stretching it. And I'm going to do the other side while I'm here. Oops. So there we go. Now I'm ready to serge those two sides. I like to be able to feed the material all the way sort of under and give it a nice start. When I'm doing the corner, I'm just kind of moving just a little bit and turning it around. Here is my waistband and it's all sewn together and it should be a nice tube, which it is. The idea is now we're going to fold it so that the wrong sides are together. And then we're going to place it onto our pants. But there's a really cool trick to hold your side seams together just to make it a little bit easier. And that trick is you're actually going to take your part that you've just sewn and you're going to fold it on top of each other. And I'm just going to sew from the bottom here just till about here. Don't sew all the way to the top. I find it gives a bit of a point. So I'm just going to sew from here to here, and I'm going to back stitch down here and back stitch up here. Make sure everything is nice and even. And I'm going to repeat the same thing to the other side. So really it looks like this, and I'm just sewing my seam allowance. Don't sew into the material. You only want to sew into your seam allowance. So I'm going to sew less than 1/4 of an inch. So I'm lining it up even less than what I have been originally sewing. If you back stitch, you need to hang on to the back of your threads to help pull your material out of that way. Again, I'm going to stop there because I don't need it to be any further. And then I'm going to do the same to the other side, and then I'm going to show you what happens. Now what you're going to do is you're just going to open this one up, and you're going to see what it allows it to do is to keep this in place. So now you're not fiddling with trying to get all of your edges nice and even. This is a cool little trick that my friend showed me how to do. So now we're going to be putting the waistband onto our shorts. The first thing we need to do is we need to fold our waistband so that we can get the center front and the center back. At this point, it doesn't matter which is the front and the back because it's exactly the same. So to find that, you're going to take this and you're going to fold your side seams together, just like that. And then you're going to mark your center front. Oops. And I like to mark it on both inside and the outside part, just in case. It just depends on how you put it around. It's not really working. Get a different chalk. And there we go. You just want a little mark because you don't want to see it at the end in your pants. For pants, you should have had your markings. I just did again a scissor cut, and that's going to be where your seams are going to line up. Okay, so now I've got my center front with a marking, and I've got my center back marked, and I've got my two side seams. So now you're going to put this inside. You want your cut edges to match. I'm going to line it up like this and stick it inside my pants. Just like that. So take your two center fronts, right there and right there, match it up, oh, sorry, that's your back. No, that's your front, your center front. And you can go ahead and start to pin that. And this is when you want everything to line up, because if not, you're going to not get one of them. Good. Here's where you want to take into account what the seam direction is. And we'll have to check the other side as well. Now I'm going to do my side, match up my markings with my side. So this is really nice because we've sewn that together. It's just not going to go anywhere. Okay, do my other side. I can check to make sure that this seam is going in the right direction, and it is. From there all the way. There's not a lot of stretching involved because the waistband should fit exactly that opening. So I've got a needle right here. Make sure that gets out of the way right away. And again, just go slowly. Go slowly when there's a bump. We don't want the thread to break, because then it's just going to mess up your serge. Also be careful of the cutoffs if they're starting to come back into your serging. So again, we want to take this slowly and just watching where everything is. Pulling everything out of the way. So you can see here, it kind of folded over a little bit. I didn't check enough, so we want to make sure that ends properly. And I'm always going to serge over what I've already started with, or where I started. This one here, I'm going to leave a bit of a tail so I can feed it through. There you go. Your waistband is on. Always make sure that everything's caught in. We're going to press that seam down. And then the next thing we need to do is, if you're doing shorts, you might want to hem them, and we're probably going to use a twin needle, or we might use a cover lock. It just depends on how it gets set up. But now you want to try it on, make sure it fits, that there's not too much material there in the front, that the waistband is nice and tight. And then again, if you want to shorten your shorts, you can. You don't have to hem them because it's not going to fray. All right, and that's pretty much it. So super simple.